I'm from Monterrey, Mexico, which is in the north, right below
Hmm.
Texas, northeast. It's
Northeast.
actually a pretty big city. So, the biggest cities in Mexico are Mexico City, obviously, and then Guadalajara and
Hmm.
Monterrey, where I'm from. Monterrey doesn't have, it's like pretty modern. It doesn't have some of like the history that you have in the south of Mexico. Mostly because it's like it was a desert, so it's mostly a new city, and there's like a lot of car factories and a lot of industry. So I actually grew up there. My dad is from Mexico City, and my mom's from Saltillo, which is a very small town. And where I grew up in Mexico is very Americanized. I actually went to an American school in Mexico where all the teachers were American. And I think that my whole life, my parents really encouraged us, like, you should go to college in the States and stuff like that. But they also really pushed us. A lot of the people in Mexico travel a lot on vacation to the US or
Yeah.
Europe or wherever. And I think my parents really kind of pushed us, like, there's no point to go to see the world when you don't know your own country. And so we would travel a lot within Mexico
Yeah.
for vacation, and my parents have always collected artesanía, which is like traditional kind of folk art. And so even though I grew up in a very modern, like if you went to Monterrey, you wouldn't see much of a difference between Monterrey and Texas. Like
Yeah.
it's a very modern place, but I think my parents were always very encouraging of like patriotism and caring about crafts and Mexican art. So and I also grew up in a creative family. So my mom's a interior designer. My dad's mom was an artist, and everybody in my family has like a creative side of the brain.
Hmm.
My sister's an architect. My younger sister's an artist. So I grew up around a lot of this sort of patriotism in Mexican art, but it wasn't really until I moved to the US that I started feeling like a lot of nostalgia for it. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
think when you live in Mexico, you're just another person. When you immigrate, you're a Mexican person in the like I
Yeah.
never was
Yeah.
aware that
Right.
I'm just a person. It's the
Yeah.
same as like a food. It's like it's just food, it's not Mexican food. But then you leave Mexico and it becomes Mexican food. It's the same way I think I felt like once I moved to the US, I became very aware that like, oh, I'm a Mexican person.
Mm.
This is like such a half of my personality, and so much of my identity is being a Mexican person. And I started having a lot of nostalgia for things that I grew up around that I took maybe for granted or I didn't pay much attention. And I think I really, I moved to the States because to go to Parsons School of Design. And I always wanted to, since I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a fashion designer. And think once, I graduated from Parsons, you get on this hamster wheel and you're just going through jobs and jobs and jobs. And I always wanted to do my own brand, and this was always at the back of my mind, like what am I gonna say as a designer? And I think that's where that nostalgia played in. And so even though craft was always a part of my life, I always kind of took those things for granted, like all these. When my mom's an interior designer, when you go to her house in Mexico, she's like, oh, and this, I found this wood was found in this place. And this was like, she works a lot of like that with artisans for her design. And you sort of take it for granted. And then when you live in the US, handwork is very expensive. Everything, my mom always says, because she's like, I couldn't design in the US because everything is standard. Everything is standard.
This is
Like,
from our warehouse in New Jersey.
yeah, there's no custom windows. She's like, everything is standard. And so I think as a grown up, I started really appreciating and really listening to that she says. And so much of Heirloom comes from my parents
Yeah.
and my growing up within these conversations constantly.